Every artist has their preference when it comes to what palette to use. There are many different options available, from paper palettes to paper plates, wet palettes, wood palettes. But if you paint with acrylic, I highly recommend trying out a glass palette. Glass palettes are great to use because they are customizable in terms of size. They are ideal for color mixing because of the white background that you paint behind the glass. They are easy to clean up, and they also will last for many years. I will show you how to make your own glass palette that's affordable, easy to make, and you will have for a very long time. This is my glass palette. I've been using this one for about 20 years. It is 28 inches wide. So how we're going to make our palette is we have the glass. Below the glass is cardboard that's gessoed white. And you can see in the back, this is the gesso. We're also going to use duct tape to tape around the sides. So let's go ahead and I'll show you exactly how to make your own glass palette. The supplies you will need to make your own glass palette is first an offcut of glass that you get from the glass store. You want to get some protective gloves because the glass is going to be very sharp. You need some kind of utility knife or X-Acto knife or scissors to cut the cardboard and also to cut the tape. A black marker or some kind of writing utensil so that you can trace around the size of your palette onto the cardboard. And you will need duct tape. Silver duct tape is fine. I prefer white because I like mine to be really clean on the sides. But just so you know, over time, over like a year of painting, you'll probably cover up the duct tape color anyway, so you can just go with the silver basic duct tape. This is the glass that I bought from our local auto glass and mirror store. So you go into the store and you have them cut you some pieces, and I got a 12-inch by 20-inch piece. I got an 1/8 of inch thick. You can get a little bit thinner, but I prefer the thicker pieces. Now make sure you're wearing your gloves, and you want to make sure to clean each side, especially the side that's going to be taped down. You can use window glass cleaner, and for anything stubborn, use a palette knife and rubbing alcohol, and that should take up any adhesive or sticky things or anything that is sticking to the palette. After cleaning, you're going to want to get your cardboard and lay your glass in. You can see there that I have one edge that is perfectly straight, so I'm going to use that edge. And I use my marker to outline. You want to also be sure to have masonite or another piece of thick cardboard under your cutting area so you don't ruin your table. And then you want to get a metal hard edge. Metal's better because a wood ruler you could actually cut into. So go ahead, and you're going to probably have to make about 4 different strokes. Now I have relatively thick cardboard here, so I needed to cut a lot to get this to go through. So basically you want to keep cutting until it feels like there's not much resistance. So you just cut and cut and cut until you don't feel like there's any resistance anymore. And then you should be able to pop out your cardboard from each side that you cut. After you cut out your cardboard, just brush off any dust or anything that's left and go ahead and gesso. You can do 1 or 2 coats, it's up to you. I did 2 coats because I like a really good covered surface, and I just wanted to have really clear white space. The alternative would be to do a really thick 1 coat. Just make sure to cover every little nook and cranny, really push in the gesso so you get every little nook and cranny on top of the cardboard, and then you should be able to dry it. So to dry your gesso completely, you can put your board out into the sun. It will dry within probably about 5 or 10 minutes. The other option would be to use a hair dryer, as you see here. You can use high heat and keep moving around, and then you can see I'm using my hand to touch the surface every once in a while, and that's to check and just see if it's actually dry. Now that the gessoed board is dry, I am going to put a second coat on, and in the second coat, I'm going to go in the other direction. So my brush strokes will be opposite of what I did before, and this is just to get really good coverage, and I do like how it looks when you have 2 coats of gesso, but like I said, 1 coat should be fine. Once again, you're going to want to let that second coat dry completely because you don't want it to be wet when you're putting the glass on top. Now, this is optional, but you can also gesso the backside. The palette that I've used for 20 years, I did not gesso the backside, and it is held up. But if you do get some water on it, or if you want to put it into the sink and give it a good clean, this does protect it a little bit more. You could also spray a varnish or some other kind of clear coat on the back if you wanted to, but this is unnecessary. It's an extra step if you just want a little bit of extra protection. So if you gesso the back side, again, be sure to dry completely and then just brush off any dust or anything sticking to it. Make sure it's totally dry. If it's not, hit it again with the hair dryer. And now it's time to put it together. So get your glass piece, keep your gloves on right now, and just line it up really well. Then you want to get your duct tape. Then you want to measure out the duct tape so it is a little bit longer than the side you were taping, and tape it down, press starting from the center, sort of pushing out, and you want to fold that over. So this first layer, you're going to do it this way, where you tape it from the top to the back. You'll see the second coat of tape, I'm going to do a different way, so make sure to watch this till the end. And just fold it over in the back and tape it, and just do that to each side. Notice I don't have gloves on in this part because it's really difficult to work with the gloves when you're trying to get the tape off. So just make sure you're really careful and that you're not touching the edge of the glass, which is really sharp. After that's done, actually put on more tape to add a protective layer. But watch how I change my method a little bit here. So once again, we're going to measure how long it is and cut the tape off. And we're going to stick it on the top. And then what we'll do is we'll flip it over and we're going to fold over the tape and pull really tightly as you finish that edge. Okay, and so this will help the tape to adhere better and to just have a nice tight edge. And you can see I'm doing another layer. And here what you can see what I'm doing is I'm first pulling down the long piece of tape and then I'm cutting a little section there and folding it over so you get some really nice corners that are extra protected. And so you want to do that on each side, where once again you measure the tape, you stick it on the top, and then you flip it over, pull the tape towards you really tight so you have a nice tight finish, and then you cut the little top area and make a nice corner on each edge. Now, as you can see, each time I do a corner, I'm trying out a different method. And like in this example, I cut off the little extra tape there. And, it's not a really big deal. I think the most important thing is that your corners have the thickest amount of tape because, that's the part that would be most likely to cut. But just mess around and see what you like the best. I think the cleanest edge is when I cut off that excess tape, but it's really minor and you're not even going to notice once you start using your palette. So once you finish, take a look, and I think the tape that I have folded over is a little bit thin. So I'm adding this extra piece of tape on the back that's just going to help keep that tape attached to the cardboard because you don't want the cardboard to separate out from the tape from the glass palette. This is an extra additional layer. If you folded over a thicker piece of tape onto your back, then you don't have to do this. But I think this is not a bad idea to do just for a little extra protection. Once again, if it gets wet or something, the tape acts as a barrier and it will just help keep your palette alive for a long time. And then that's it. You can see we have a beautiful palette here ready to paint. Now let's talk about cleanup. So for cleanup, when the paint is wet, you can just wipe it with a paper towel. You can also spray with water and then that will take off more paint. And then for any paint that's dry, use your palette knife and some rubbing alcohol or water to spray it. For any paint that's really stuck on there, I like to spray rubbing alcohol and I'll let it sit for a little bit and then I'll try scraping and then that usually takes care of it. And then just for the final cleanup, I use a wet rag and I wipe down the palette and you can see now it's good as new.